Welcome everybody, and we are happy again to have 3 days discourse. Today will be infinite joy. Not limited, but that infinite. Okay, so without much wasting the time, I request the Swami to give us this source of infinite joy, not only the source touch of the infinite joy. Welcome.
Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityurma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from darkness unto light, lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace. Good evening and namaste, everybody. My pranams to revered Swami Sarvapriyananda Maharaj, all other revered monks and Matajis who are present here. So this is the third and the last in a set of 3 talks on a certain sequence, a passage from the Upanishads. This is from Taittiriya Upanishad. I'll just recite the passage again, which we studied on Tuesday and yesterday and again today. It goes like this. Brahma vidapnoti param tadeshabhyukta satyam jnanam anantam brahma yo veda nihitam guhayam parame vyoman so ashnute sarvan kaman saha brahmana vipaschiteti. The knower of Brahman attains the highest. I think this is a very succinct way of expressing what spiritual life is all about. There is some ultimate reality, and that can be accessed. And by accessing that, all our problems are solved. And then I said 3 questions arise out of it. What is the nature of this ultimate reality? What is Brahman? Can you define it? And the Upanishad obliges by saying, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Brahman is limitlessness. It is limitless existence, limitless consciousness. So Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. That was discussed on Tuesday. What does it mean? How do you unpack that definition? And then it also goes on to say that by knowing this Brahman, realizing it, one attains the highest. So knowing Brahman, that question comes up. What do you mean knowing Brahman? What is this knowing Brahman? How do you know Brahman? And the Upanishad itself goes on to say you to know Brahman in the sacred space in the cave of your heart. What is the cave of the heart and what is this sacred space and how do you know Brahman there? That was yesterday's discussion. It is the method of vichara, inquiry. Inquiry into what? A logical inquiry into ourselves. Again, what do you mean by ourselves? Our experience of life. The way we experience ourselves. We experience ourselves as body and mind, and an investigation into that. This body-mind is called the cave. An investigation, a close look, a guided tour of this cave. And then we discover, quite surprisingly, Brahman, not as we would have thought, like a Russian nesting doll, 5 levels, and smaller and smaller than one. Finally, one Brahman emerges. Not quite like that. So we found that. Now, the payoff. Today is the fun day. What do you get out of all of this? Apnoti param, attains the highest. So the one who realizes what one is truly, the self, attains the highest. What is attaining the highest? What is the highest? And the Upanishad obliges by explaining, you attain the fulfillment of all desires at once. It's like some mega Black Friday sale, where whatever you could have wanted, you get all at once. You're deluged by Amazon packages. Not quite. So what does this mean? What is happiness? How do you attain this fulfillment, this ultimate deep fulfillment? This is what the subject today. And it's very interesting that the Upanishad itself, towards the end of this chapter, there is a section, the 8th section, where so the analysis of happiness. It is called Ananda Mimamsa. Mimamsa means analysis, or the definition of Mimamsa is Pujita Vichara, reverential inquiry. So a reverential inquiry into bliss. That's what we'll do today. So my plan is to read that section and then talk about it. And then we'll take up questions. So, happiness. Now, the way we think we are happy is, we have desires, we want stuff in the world. We want things, we want people to behave in a certain way towards us. I want all the nice gadgets and all the latest stuff and all the food that I like. I also want people to like me, especially on social media, they give me the likes. All of these things I want. Why do I want them? Because if these wants are fulfilled, I'll feel happy. How do I know? My experience tells me so. The world tells me so. If you do these things, if you are rich, if you are liked by others, if you are healthy, if you have lots of interesting things in your life, you will be happy. The world tells me. And my own experience also says, more or less, yeah, it does make me happy in some ways to have all these experiences, have these things in my life. So I pursue it. So this is my theory of happiness. Very soon we realize that happiness actually doesn't come from things. It doesn't come really from people. It doesn't even come from the likes and the people. Happiness is internal. Those things are important, but the actual experience of happiness is internal. That is an obvious fact, but it demands attention. So we say, oh, all right, happiness is internal, but we have to rearrange our world in order to get that internal condition called happiness or fulfillment. By the way, when I say happiness, I mean all sorts of things, starting from pleasure to happiness, to fulfillment, to satisfaction, contentment, all of that. All positive effect, let us say, what we are seeking in life. Just right here, there's somebody who objected to that, Sean Carroll, who is a physicist here in Caltech. So he wrote this book, The Big Picture. And there, towards the end, he says that people say the goal of life is happiness, but I don't think so. I'm not pursuing happiness, I'm pursuing knowledge. I want the answers to certain questions, which I'm doing research in. So even if it makes me unhappy, even if it demands a lot of hard work and disappointments and all, but I will still pursue it because I want that. So I'm not motivated by happiness. I don't think that argument holds water. If you were to ask him, if you get the results to your research, will that make you happy or unhappy? Will it make you unhappy? No, it will make you happy. And the very pursuit of that, the science that you're undertaking, which is hard work, which is sometimes unpleasant, struggle, that hard work, does that make you happy? Would it make you happier to stop it? No. So you are pursuing happiness. You are pursuing fulfillment, contentment in a particular sphere. We shouldn't mix up happiness with just a smiley face, So pleasure is one type of happiness. Certainly it is a kind of happiness. But the whole range of happiness, I'm giving an umbrella term. This analysis of happiness. This is what motivates us. Two things motivate us. We want to rise out of unhappiness, out of pain, out of sorrow. We want to solve the problems in our lives, the struggles in our lives. We don't enjoy it at all. We want that to stop, reduce the pain and suffering. And we also want positive fulfillment. And spirituality is here. Vedanta is here. Most boldly, Vedanta is here to tell us that one can attain deep and lasting fulfillment. The proof is also the lives of the saints, those who are enlightened. You find one thing is common to all of them. Not that they all go around with the smiley faces, with blissful, blissed out expressions. Some of them are pretty grim folks. But one thing is common to all of them. They have no complaints. It would be very strange to have an enlightened person who's full of grudges and is whining and grumbling all the time. It doesn't go together. So somebody who is deeply fulfilled and lastingly so, it's possible. It's possible. And Vedanta says it's possible. Now, Vedanta has this unique theory of happiness. Yes, external things are important, but happiness is not only an internal state, but it's a manifestation of our real nature. Vedanta says, what you saw in the analysis yesterday and day before yesterday, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, our real nature is limitless existence consciousness. And that limitlessness is happiness. This is Vedanta's core idea. The Atman, our nature is happiness. As Vivekananda put it, the Atman, our self, not that it exists, it is existence itself. Not that it knows, it is consciousness itself or knowledge itself. And not that it is joyful, it is joy itself. What that means we will see a little further along. But the point here is, what we experience as happiness is not only things, is that it's not things outside, that's everybody understands that, but if it's not even quite a state of the mind internally. What we experience as happiness in the state of the mind internally is but a reflection, a small manifestation of, as Shankaracharya would say, the ocean of happiness within you. What is that ocean of happiness within you? You. You are the ocean of happiness. Shankaracharya, a number of times he says, there is within us our real nature, which is an ocean of happiness, and what we consider to be happiness, pleasure, nice things in the world, pleasant life, that is just spray from this limitless ocean. And he says, this spray from this limitless ocean, which people in the world are mad about. They're running after it. That's all that motivates people. And it's just spray from an ocean which is within you, which is you. Sri Ramakrishna gave a very striking story, example. He says there is a dog which chews a dry bone and finds it very tasty. But the taste is not in the bone actually. What the dog doesn't know is that the dry bone cuts its inner lip and it bleeds, and it tastes its blood and feels, oh, it's such a tasty bone. And then it carefully buries the bone, and whenever it wants pleasure, it comes and chews on that bone and thinks it's the best bone in the world. But all the time it is tasting its own blood. The joy it is tasting comes from within. And that is the Vedantic theory of happiness. Not that we are going to have to chew on an old bone. What it means is, what we think is happiness is just a manifestation of our real nature. The Atman, the Brahman. That, when manifested in the mind, appears as positive effect, a flash of that. The world is our old bone, and we chew on it and on until a little bit of the inner joy, which is ourselves, flashes forth, and we think that bone is very tasty, the world is very tasty. Another way I like to think about it is, maturity. As we become more and more mature, when at first we want to be happy, we think things in the world will make us happy. So we try to get those things in the world. From babyhood onwards, we try to get things from the world which make us happy. As we grow a little older, we try to sort of rearrange the world. I want to control the things that are there, buy stuff which I like, get rid of stuff I don't like, stay in a place which I like, drive the car which I like, hang out with people I like, and then try to manipulate them into behaving with me the ways I want them to behave, so that they like me, and not in the ways that I don't like. Very soon, as we become more mature, and this really is serious maturity, we realize it's not so much the world outside which needs to be rearranged, it's my own life. Then I realize, no, that's not the way to be happy. My life, I have to change my life. I have to clean up my act, be a good person, get up early in the morning, eat healthy, do yoga, gluten-free. Yes, I saw a sign outside for the first time in my life. When I heard the term gluten-free, it was just outside here. While turning into the avenue to come to the ashram, there's a big billboard, gluten-free vodka. Only in California. So be healthy, eat and drink healthy food, then exercise, meditate, do positive thinking. So basically rearranging my life, rearranging the body, the thoughts in my mind. So I try to rearrange that. When that doesn't work, I try to rearrange my inner life, the thoughts in the mind. I'll fill my life with meditation and devotion. That's even more mature. Make some changes there. And finally, come to Vedanta, Advaita. When all of them do not give you what you want, you turn inwards to the 10th person. You realize what you were looking for was always there. With limitless happiness, which is ourselves. By the way, when we define Brahman as Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, Satyam means Sat, pure being. Jnanam means Chit, pure consciousness. Now you might be thinking you are missing the Ananda part of it. You're talking about Ananda. Where is Ananda? Satchidananda, that's the formulation. Well, that Anantam is Ananda. Limitlessness is bliss. Another Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad says, Yo vai bhuma tat sukham nalpe sukham asti. That which is the vast is happiness. There is no happiness in the limited. The vast alone is the happiness. What is that vast? It is you, the limitless existence, the limitless consciousness, that non-dual self, the limitless non-dual self, that is the vast, and that is happiness itself. Being, that is the happiness. So, that is the Vedantic theory of happiness. But then how does Vedanta explain why do we feel happy sometimes, more happy, less happy, and unhappy? What Vedanta says is, what's the connection of happiness with desire and satisfying desires? What Vedanta says is, when we have desires in the mind, it obstructs the manifestation of our inner happiness. It's like a mirror. You have a mirror, but there's a layer of dust over it. When you remove the layer of dust, you see your face in the mirror. Similarly, when we remove that desire, when we satisfy our desires, it settles down for a moment, and in that desireless, for a fraction of a moment, for some time, in that sort of less desires have been satisfied for the moment, this inner happiness is manifest, and I say, I feel happy. And I make the mistake which the dog made. That thing made me happy. That cookie, that person's Facebook like, that person's, or that the latest iPhone, that made me happy. Because I had a desire for that, and when I got that, the desire subsided, and I felt a flash of happiness. Immediately I think, that thing. But no, it is you. You are seeing your face in the mirror. So that's the Vedantic theory of happiness, that happiness is from within, manifested within, and desire is an obstruction to happiness. And, one might say that, okay, all of that is fancy talk, but it still boils down to the fact that you have to satisfy your desires. If desires are obstructing my happiness, let it be your fancy Atman, infinity within, which is manifesting, or none of that, just psychological happiness. In any case, whoever you are, Vedantic or just the common person, you have to satisfy your desires. Then only happiness will be manifest. Whether it's the Atman manifesting itself, or it's just joy in the mind, after eating a cookie you wanted or something like that. So that's where we are now. And now we are going to go into this, the background for the analysis of happiness. So this is the 8th section of the 2nd chapter of the Taittiriya Upanishad. What they're going to do now is, they're going to look at happiness and measure it. To measure something, you need units. So they'll define the unit of happiness, human happiness. What's the maximum happiness you can conceive of? When you read this, you'll be smiling all throughout, because there's so much happiness talk here. It's all talk, but it's all happiness talk. More happiness, many times more happiness. And they tell us how it's possible. What's the maximum human happiness you can conceive of? Just dream. Don't look at the constraints of reality. Just dream. And then the maximum you can conceive of, that's 1 unit of happiness. And then they're going to talk about 100 times that, 10,000 times that, 100,000 times that. A mind-blowing happiness. So, this is called Vishayananda. All that we have been talking about, this is a kind of happiness called Vishayananda. Vishaya means object. The happiness that is gained from objects. As we satisfy our desires for anything. You can satisfy a desire from a cookie to classical music to knowledge and philosophy and science and creativity, all of that. As we satisfy our desires, we get more and more happiness. This is called Vishayananda, the happiness born of contact with desired objects. It could be actually a thing or a person or a project or success, power, whatever it is, whatever that gives you happiness. This is one kind of happiness. Is there any other kind? There is a spiritual happiness, which I'll come to. But first, Vishayananda, the maximum possible happiness one can dream about, or even you can't dream about it. Here, how do we do that? I'm reading from the Upanishad and translating. Saisha anandasya mimagam sa bhavati. This then is a calculation of bliss, an analysis of bliss. Yuva syat sadhu yuva adhyayakaha ashishto dridishto balishtaha tasyeyam prithivi sarva vittasya purna syat sa eko manusha anandaha. This is one unit of human bliss. What is that? First, how do you get maximum human bliss? First will be very disappointing for a lot. The first condition is you have to be young. I remember in one gathering when I mentioned that all the oldsters went boo, boo. But it's true. What takes a lot of effort after 40 or 50, it's effortless when you're 21. So this person, a really happy person is young. And then, not only young, yuva syat sadhu yuva adhyayaka. It's a good person, a noble person. It's a young person, dissolute, and I'm often reminded of Milton's saying, the mind in its own place can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. Is it in Milton? The mind is its own place or in its own place? In its own place. The mind in its own place can make a heaven of hell and a hell of heaven. So we know of so many people who were born with the proverbial silver spoon in their mouth and they ruined their lives. And we know of so many people who struggled in life and made a wonderful life for themselves, materially speaking. They became rich and successful and famous and so on and so forth. So, a good person. The good are generally happier than the evil. Then you might not think so. You might think the evil are doing very well, only externally. But remember, happiness is for everybody. Happiness is felt in the mind. And evil, immorality, unethical action disturbs the mind. Even if you have all the happiness in the world, you can't enjoy it in a disturbed mind. Then the good person. And then not just a good person, adhyayaka, highly educated person, a very learned and cultivated and cultured young good person. So multiple Ivy League degrees and stuff like that, and maybe all sorts of things in sports and music and art and all that. So such a highly cultured, young, good person. And no weakling either. Ashishto, dridishta, balishtaha. 3 words for strength. So physically strong and with the sensory system is vigorous. So if you want to really enjoy stuff, you should have a hearty appetite. Appetite for all sorts of things. And so this is a vigorous person who can enjoy all sorts of things in the world. And also resolute. Gets things done. So if you want something, go and get it done. So this kind of vigorous, young, good, highly capable, learned person. And then very important, it says, Tasyayam prithivi sarva vittasya purna syat. It's no use being all of this and being dirt poor. Such a person will not remain poor very long, so they'll work very hard and make a life for themselves. But the thing is, I remember saying once, it is how strange it is that we sacrifice our youth and health to earn money and then spend that money to restore the health we have lost in making that money. So this person is very lucky. He is born rich. What do you call it? In California, there are many of them. Trust fund baby. So trust fund baby, born rich, born into money, has plenty of money, is not going to misuse the money either because he's a very good person, very educated and cultured. So the world full of wealth lies at his feet. That means not just rich, super rich, mega rich. So you have enormous amounts of wealth and all the degrees you could want and all the cultivating, all the arts and sciences you could want. And you are young and the world is open before you and you are strong and vigorous. And so go out and have fun. Saeko manushanandaha. This is 1 unit, the maximum you can imagine kind of human bliss, human happiness, maximum. Is there anything more possible? Any more kind of bliss possible? Yes, there is something possible, but not in this life. This is the maximum you can get in this life. But this life is not the only life. We existed earlier and we will exist afterwards. And there are other kinds of lives, other kinds of beings, and they apparently have much more fun than we have. So he says, Te ye shatam manushanandaha sa eko manushya gandharvanam anandaha. So there is a class of beings, manushya gandharva. They are what are called celestial musicians. So when you die from here, so if suppose you are from the Juilliard school or something like that, you've got your degrees and you play for the Berkeley, what is that? Symphony. And all of that, and you have a highly talent and you love music. And you're a good person and you've been, so after death you are reborn again or manifested again in this celestial realm where your musical capacities are increased dramatically, many times, manyfold. I was reading this, a famous classical musician who became almost deaf afterwards, Bach or Beethoven. Deaf. And he keeps on composing masterpieces, which shows that the music is not really, it's at higher and higher levels, it's all internal. Even if you cannot actually hear, you can hear it in the mind. You can hear it in your dreams. So imagine something like that, or more than that. Music, dance, song. So they are the divine performers. And their happiness is 100 times more than the maximum human happiness. You can have that. How do I go there? How do I go there? So there are these. Remember, this is from the Vedas. So there are a whole range of Vedic rituals to be performed for a price. You have to pay the commission to the priest, and then who will ensure you go to the heaven of your choice. You gather enough merit, you go to that particular heaven. Again, remember, those are strictly temporary. Just as this human life is temporary, those are also temporary. Now, this is called Vishayananda, the happiness of pleasure from contact with things that you want, satisfaction of desires. And this also shows desires have a whole range. From gross physical desires to artistic, very sophisticated, very refined desires, very refined pleasures. Okay. Now, this is one kind of happiness. See, when you go to these higher realms, they'll keep talking about it. These higher realms, why do you have more happiness than here? Because what changes there is 3 things. Sharira, Vishaya, Lokaha. So the objects of happiness are more and more refined. Just as the Beethoven example shows us, actually physically performing the music and what Beethoven is hearing in his mind, that's actually more refined than whatever you could do with actual physical orchestra out there. That would be a poor reflection of the ideal music in Beethoven's mind, like Plato's forms. So the objects of enjoyment are far more refined in those heavenly realms. Plus, the body with which you enjoy, the instrument of enjoyment, that is far more powerful than this weak human body. In this human body is only a limit to how much you can eat, limit to the number of movies you can watch before your eyes get blurry. But these Gandharvas, they can watch movies all day long and they can eat all day long or whatever. So their bodies are much more powerful, like Superman or something like that. And the environment is much better. It's much better than this world. So it's just like you can take a cup of tea from a cart in the street out there, or you can go to the what is it? Is it no, Starbucks is still down market. You have to go to the Ritz-Carlton or something like that. The same cup of tea they will serve you with 10 times or 100 times the price. Why? Because they're providing you with a loka. A loka is environment, a world. So the world is much better there. And bodies are much better there. And the stuff you get to enjoy there is much better there. So 100 times happiness. Now, put this aside. There is another kind of happiness possible. That is called the spiritual happiness. The name for that is bhajanananda, the happiness of spiritual practice. Bhajanananda. What is that? That is, this person who is a spiritual seeker, who is no longer looking at things in the world for fulfillment. Maybe he holds a job and maybe at home, or maybe is a monk or a nun in an ashram. But whatever it is, the world is not the source of happiness for this person. This person understands Vedanta and understands that that our real nature is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. This has studied the Vedanta and done the inquiry. I'm not the body, not the mind. Has clarity about it. And then is trying to live that life. Is living a life of Vedantic inquiry. Is living a life of devotion to God. Is living a life of meditation, service, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, raja yoga, jnana yoga. Life is full of that. A sincere spiritual seeker, and has renounced mentally any hope of getting fulfillment from Vishayananda, from the objects, whether worldly or otherworldly, with dispassion. Such a person will get this happiness also. He says, Shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. The one who is well versed in the Shruti, in the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in Brahmananda Valli, who knows very well, who is very clear about the fact, I am not the food body, I am not the pranic body, I am not the mental body, I am not the intellect, I am not even the causal body, I am the witness consciousness, the 10th man, in which all of these and more appear and rise and sink. I am the limitless existence, I am the limitless awareness, I am not born, I do not die, I shine forever. It is by my light that the mind is lit up and the intellect is lit up and the senses work. So I am Atman, I am Brahman, who has realized the Brahman shining, Atman shining in the cave of the heart. This person, Shrotriya, all of this is meant by that. Chakamahataha, literally it means not damaged or destroyed by desire. So the desire is, I want these things. Now he's realized happiness is not from those things. See, this person thinks the Vedantic theory of happiness. This person also wants happiness. He also wants bliss, ananda. But now realizes that the ananda is a manifestation of my real nature. This Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. When this is experienced, it's reflected in the mind. That is what real ananda is. All happiness is a manifestation from within. So now this can be done in two ways. Remember, one is I have a desire, then I satisfy that desire, and then a little bit of happiness is manifested. The Atman is reflected in the mind, in the mirror of the mind. That's one way. But it's a very troublesome way. You have to continuously have desires. They have to struggle to satisfy them. How many people are this young, super rich, super educated, vigorous young person? How many are like that? And so how many are like that? Very few in every generation, in every period of human history. Only one or two such people will be there in the world. So it's a troublesome way of generating desires and satisfying them. And again generating more desires. And that's the way we define happiness here. In the early 21st century, in the world that we live, especially this is the California model of happiness. So you keep on generating desires and keep on satisfying them. No, I'm not. what is the word? Dissing on California. You're actually far ahead of the East Coast people who do the same thing, but they seriously believe in it. And so, Californians are much more, West Coast people are much more relaxed about it. They know it's all from inside, so they're content to let it shine forth. Erich Fromm said, what passes for happiness in our culture? He meant 1960s industrial America. What passes for happiness in our culture is building up tension and releasing it. It's building up tension and releasing it. Advertisement builds up tension, and then you go out and buy it or do that activity and then release it. And I feel happy for a while. But this person says, but if that is my happiness, if I am the happiness being reflected in the desireless mind, why not do the other thing? Instead of generating a desire and obscuring my own happiness, why not let go of the desire? Then happiness should be manifest. If it is at all true that happiness does not come from satisfying desires. Satisfying desires just removes the obstruction to natural shining happiness. If that's at all true, then if I do give up the desires, and I am quite clear about where to look for happiness in my limitless nature. For that you need to have Vedanta, the inquiry, self-inquiry. If that's clear, I should be happy. It's a test case. If I am a spiritual seeker and I stop pursuing material pursuits and trying to get happiness from material pursuits, will I be happy or not? Or will I be unhappy? This person says, let me try it out. So this is track 2 happiness project. For track 1 happiness project, Vishayananda, that super rich guy who is going to be very happy in this world, and the next world is going to be a celestial musician. So this person says, I will not go down that path. I will practice my meditation, my devotion, my service, and I'll be quite centered in my nature as limitless awareness existence. Let's see if I am happy. And the Upanishad says, you will get that 100-fold happiness of the celestial musician, the celestial DJ, disc jockey. You'll get that happiness here itself. Yeah. He says, here itself. Shrotriyasya jakamahatasya. In this life, in the human life, being a spiritual seeker, giving up those desires. And of course, it must be combined with clear Vedantic realization that I'm not the body-mind. If you keep thinking I'm the food body or the pranic body or the mind body, then material desires will catch hold of you. So clarity, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, I am Brahman, and I let go of those desires. And he says, you will get that 100-fold maximum human desire here itself. Wow, that's great. Any more desire, by the way? Any more happiness is possible? The 100-fold human happiness you can get here. What your friend, track 1 guy, will get only in the next life, in afterlife, after giving up this body and then going to that particular heaven, and then in that virtual realm will enjoy that happiness. Any more happiness possible? Yes, there's a whole range of heavens waiting for you. More happiness, more and more happiness. Let's see. Te ye shatam manushya gandharvanam sa eko deva gandharvanam anandaha shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. That which is the happiness of the human celestial, the human being who has become a celestial musician. There's another category of this celestial musician called a Deva Gandharva, and they have 100 times more fun than the Manushya Gandharvas. So if you calculate, it's 100 times of 100. That goes to 10,000 times. 10,000 times of what? The guy who was the happiest human being. 10,000 times that happiness that Deva Gandharva has, if you go to that heaven. But if you give up those desires, if your desirelessness, if your renunciation is that great, that you give up all worldly desires and all those other worldly desires also, you remain content as a limitless awareness, you will get that happiness here. Shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. The spiritual seeker will be the spiritual sadhaka, the one on track 2, Bhajanananda, will get that 10,000 times happiness here in this life. That other guy on track 1 has to wait for dying and then going to an uncertain, depending on the reliability of the Vedic rituals which have been performed and the priests. And so he will go there. The ancient Indian materialists, the Charvakas, would make fun of the Vedic ritualists. Perform these rituals for your father who has passed on, and by the merit of these rituals, your father will go to heaven as you offer these offerings of ghee, clarified butter, into the fire with accompaniment of chants with your well-paid, quote unquote. That has to always assumed priests doing it. Then the fire will take the merit the fire god will take it to your father, and who will. So this is the Vedic idea of our Father in heaven. So he goes to that heaven. And the Indian materialists, the Charvakas, had a field day of making fun with that. He said, why go through this complicated process if you have to pour offerings into the fire, and then the fire will take your offerings up to your father who has passed away, and then that will take your father to that high heaven. Why not throw your father into the fire anyway? So you will take him to the heaven straight away. So like that they would make fun. But you can experience it here. Try it out here itself and see if you're happy or not. More happiness. Any more? Yes, there's plenty more on display. Let me read it out. Te ye shatam deva gandharvanam anandaha sa eka pitrinam chiraloka lokanam anandaha shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. Higher than these celestial musicians is the world of our ancestors. So there's a world where our ancestors, if they were good guys, your grandpa, grandmom and all of them, so they have gone to this higher world. And there the happiness is 100 times the happiness of the Deva Gandharvas. So 100 times of 10,000 times of this. You're getting into some pretty huge numbers here. This is the happiness of those of our ancestors who are in that celestial world, Pitriloka. And as you might imagine, you can get the same happiness here if you give up the desire for Pitriloka and you're centered in your Vedantic knowledge. I am limitless consciousness. Here, Shrotriyasya chakamahatasya. But you can't have the desire. You have to let go of that desire and be centered. I am limitless awareness and existence. How do you spend your time if you're not pursuing satisfaction of desires? You spend your time in spiritual practices. In your Vedantic study, in your meditation, in your devotions, in your service, all of that. What else? More. By now it's going to get a little tedious. So much happiness. Let me just read it through. All of these will be different kinds of heavenly beings who get 100 times more, 100 times more, 100 times more. In each case, if you don't want it and say, I am Brahman right here, you will get that happiness right now. You don't have to wait for that. I remember once revered Swami Sarvapriyananda, our late president who passed away recently, he used to teach us when we were novices. So, no, this was not him. This was Swami Sarvapriyananda, who later became the vice president. He also has passed on. He used to teach us novices, and when talked about higher heavens and giving up the desire for other worlds and higher heavens, and we glibly said, oh yeah, I don't want it. And he said, not so fast. You can't give up the desire for a laddu. And you say you want to give up desires for heavens, it's just because you don't believe in it. You think they don't really exist, so you are very happy. I give it up. It's like $1 billion. If I had $1 billion, I would give it to you. I don't have it, so and there's no hope of getting it. So I'm very, very generous with all my imagined money. So I don't believe in any of it. So I give it up. I renounce it all. He said, no, and it's not so easy. These Vedic ancestors, they used to believe in these heavens, that you actually get these places of tremendous material joy. These are really, really fun places. So you go, they're pretty, it's not that they are partying all the time. They're pretty noble beings there. That's why their happiness is so much. So give that happiness up and you get 100 times right here itself. Sa eka ajana janang devanāmanandah shrotriyasya cha kama hatasya. Just keep repeating in your mind the different higher and higher gods. Te ye shatam ajana janam devanāmanandah sa eka karma devanāmanandah ye karmana devanapi yanti shrotriyasya cha kama hatasya. Goes on, higher and higher heavens. And then where does it end? What's the maximum? What's the end of at the top end of the spectrum? So you come there. So New York, somebody told me, Hollywood, it's glamour. Are you connected with the film industry? So that's, you've made it in life. In New York, are you rich? Then you made it in life. So there is something called billionaires row. So now let's take a look at the billionaires row here. So what's the maximum possible heavenly bliss? So it goes on like this. Saeka prajapateranandah shrotriyasya cha kama hatasya te ye shatam prajapateranandah sa eko brahmana anandah shrotriyasya cha kama hatasya. So it finally ends with Brahma, Hiranyagarbha, who is at the source of this universe, the cosmic mind. There's only one of those. Every time the universe is created, there's only one of those. And that one has the highest bliss. So I sat down and calculated, starting with 1 of the human being, and then working my way up 100, and 100 of that, and 100 of that. 10 to the power 2, 10 to the power 2, 10 to the power 2. So how much happiness does Hiranyagarbha have? The last one, the end of all, highest heaven, literally highest heaven. And turned out to be 10 to the power 20. 1 followed by 20 zeros. Of what? Of the maximum possible human happiness. That brilliant, rich, healthy and good young person who is the happiest human being. 10 to the power 20 of that happiness. Inconceivable. Don't even try to conceive it. It will blow our minds. So it's like, I remember, a person could die thinking of so much happiness. There are stories of people winning a lottery and getting a heart attack and dying. They're so happy they couldn't contain it. Similarly, if you just read this and meditate upon it, so much happiness, you'll probably get a stroke or something. I remember reading a science fiction story. It was like a very cute story. You know how children are amazed at bigger and bigger numbers? So 100, wow, that's a lot, counting up to 100. But when they're told about there's 1,000 and there's 10,000, there's 100,000, there's 1,000,000. And little kids will go, wow, thinking about it, 1,000,000. And there's something called 1,000,000,000, and there's something called 1,000,000,000,000. And they are stunned, they can't, it's incredible. And so they get, it's stunning. So in this science fiction story, a mathematician postulates a number so big that if you hear it, if you conceive of what it is, you would die. It's so stunningly big. And he names it the Killian. So this is a kind of Killian joy. Not killjoy, Killian joy. And you would get it right here in this life if you give up the desire for that happiness. Right now you would get that happiness. And then the Upanishad goes on to make a stunning statement. It says, Sa yaschayam purushe yaschasau aditye sa ekaha. The happiness which is the happiness of that one person who was the happiest human being, that one unit of human happiness, and the happiness of Brahma, not Brahman, Brahma, Hiranyagarbha, 10 to the power 20, which I calculated, they are the same. They are the same. Saeka, it's the same thing. 1 is equal to 10 to the power 20. How? They are not the same. That's much more. This is also great, but it's much, much, much less. Inconceivably, it's 1,000,000,000 times more. And this is inconceivably less. How are they one? Here's the thing. All of these, and it's all from Shankara's commentary, all of these happinesses, they are the reflections of the one limitless happiness which you are. They are partial manifestations. Like Shankara says, spray from the ocean of happiness which you are. So more spray or less spray, but the entirety of that ocean of happiness, the reality is you. It's like I am sitting in a barber shop and maybe there are 100 mirrors. Now there is one reflection in that mirror. And there are 100 other or 1,000 reflections. And if I say that one reflected face and all these 1,000 reflected faces, they are one. Yes, they are. They are this one. All of them are actually this one. Those are just reflections of this one. There is one limitless happiness depending on the mind, on the readiness of that mind. Part of it is reflected. Somewhere, little one part of it, somewhere 10 to the power 20 part of it, but the infinity is as far greater from the 10 to the power 20 as it is from 1. So, and that infinite happiness, that ananda, you are. Shankaracharya uses another example. He says, it's like a pot which encloses a little bit of space. And then the vast space outside. Just as the vast space outside and the little bit of space is the same space. Similarly, the happiness of Brahman, of Hiranyagarbha, and the happiness of this one little one, they are the same. Not that 1 is equal to 10 to the power 20, but both 1 and 10 to the power 20 are reflections of infinity, which you are. Just attempts to capture that infinity. Some of you have captured a little bit, some of you have captured many, many times more, but you are all of it. This I am all of it, this realization, this is called Brahmananda. Sri Ramakrishna would say, Vishayananda, Bhajanananda, Brahmananda. He would say, you get some happiness from the world, no doubt, but it's mixed with a lot of suffering and sorrow. The happiness in the world that you get, the Vishayananda, it comes and goes. It's never stable. And it increases and decreases. It's more, or less. Even when you go to the higher heavens, there's still a whole hierarchy of happinesses. I remember when we became monks, so there was another novice, a very simple village boy. When he learned about these heavens, so he asked the Swami, the monk who was the head of the monastery. One day we were walking and talking, asking him questions. So this young man asks the old Swami, the abbot of the monastery, Swami, if I go to Brahmaloka, can I come down to Indraloka also if I want? And that Swami said, what will you do coming down to Indraloka from that higher heaven, that particular heaven? There, can you come down to a lower heaven? This works very well in Bengali. He asked, and then the old Swami said, Indraloka giye ki korbi tui? What will you do in Indraloka? He said, I would scold them, like show them what losers they are compared to me. So it's a world of trouble. Even if you go to higher and higher worlds, there is competition, and even the gods are jealous of each other. Even the gods are jealous of, gods means small g. They're jealous of each other. We are nothing. We are like insects crawling on this mud, little ball of mud we call the earth. They are far higher beings, but still they are beings. They are not God with a capital G. So there is no perfect happiness anywhere there. So it comes and goes. It is subject to being more and less, increases and decreases. And it takes a lot of trouble to get it, and you will lose it also. Even the highest heavens of those are also temporary. You will come back to this world again. And it's worse. When you have tasted those, it's awful to fall back. And there's a description of how the gods fall back to earth, because there is no aging there. So they have no warning at all. They're having the time of their lives, a celestial musician or whatever. And suddenly, time up, off you go, back to the world. You're going to be born. And the description is, they say, ha-ha-kar, alas, alas, they wail as they tumble back to earth. So, much better than this is bhajanananda, is the joy of spiritual practice. Here in itself, you will get the tremendous joy, and in a much purer, in a much nobler way, you will get the spiritual joy. But incomparably higher and greater than all of this is Brahmananda, the realization that I am the vast, I am the limitless. Imagine the joy, and this Panchadashi, the author says of Panchadashi, he says, imagine the joy of having done what is to be done in human life. Imagine the joy of having known what has to be known in life. Imagine the joy of having attained what has to be attained in human life. What we have been struggling for from lifetime after lifetime. That infinity we are looking for. That God with a capital G we were looking for. Having found it finally. Imagine the joy of living like that. Somebody said, won't it be boring? You've done everything. No. For the first time you begin to live. Vivekananda was confronted by Ingersoll when he came to the United States. The great, it's called the Great Agnostic. He was a great orator, public intellectual, going around giving talks. He met Vivekananda and he said to Vivekananda that he doesn't believe in all the spirituality. I believe in this life, in squeezing the orange of life to the last drop. And Vivekananda says, I believe in the same too. Though we may differ in our choice of fruit. For me, it's a mango. But then he says, I believe that too. And then I'm paraphrasing, I've forgotten a very, very soaring declaration of what spirituality can give us. He says, imagine knowing that you are immortal, you cannot die. You won't be in a hurry. You can take your time. Imagine knowing the joy of knowing you're one with the universe. The universe is one with you. You're vast. And then he says, squeeze the fruit of your life, the orange of your life in this way, get 10,000-fold more. See? And Vivekananda concludes saying, get every last drop. This a spiritual person is the wiser way of doing things. And also, Sri Krishna says in the Gita, what you achieve in this way in spiritual life, Bhajanananda, is not lost. The Vishayananda is lost. You say, even the highest heavens, you will say, alas, alas, and tumble back to earth. This is not lost. Not only that, this will culminate in Brahmananda, the realization that I am the infinite. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. So, that is the analysis of bliss, the analysis of happiness, Ananda Mimamsa in the Taittiriya Upanishad. We'll take questions now. Yes, there are hands. Be aggressive in raising your hand. You have to catch that, not my attention of
Please keep the questions very succinct and one question per person. It's also important. Okay, so in person, ask one.
And those who are helping us, Maharaj and Jeet, they will give preference to the ones who have not asked earlier. Yes. Tell us your name and ask the question.
Gurpreet Singh.
Gurpreet.
Did you by any chance write down the name of that vodka?
No. Well, I'm sure you can, if they have not gone out of business.
That was a joke. That was not a question. So you started the conversation pointing that physicist out who was happy, whether he gets the answer or doesn't, he just loves pursuing.
Yes.
And it sounded like that was not the right path, but listening to the whole thing, looks like my understanding ended at the same place. Looks like he may be at the same place where you're saying, it doesn't matter. I have nothing to pursue, but you got to do something. I'm just happy doing this, whether I get the result or not. How's the last stage different than where he seems like he was already there?
So here is a typical example of some pursuit in life is giving you happiness, and you're pursuing it. See, the point that he raised, which I dispute, is that he says, oh, I'm not chasing happiness, I'm chasing knowledge. And in my chasing knowledge, in my physics, in my research, I face a lot of struggles. It may not always be happy. I think he's confusing happiness with pleasure. It might not always be pleasurable to work hard and do science. But what I'm saying is, there also he's pursuing happiness. His way of pursuing happiness is doing science, is doing research. There's a difference between what Seligman calls the happiness which comes from pleasure, like eating, watching TV, consumption. That's one kind of happiness, pleasure. There's another kind of happiness, a higher and deeper kind of happiness which comes from engagement. Suppose you love the job that you do. like this physicist. He loves what he does. That also is happiness, actually. That's the point I was making. All of that will fall under Vishayananda, the first kind of happiness. Trying to find happiness in something in this worldly existence. It could be just sense pleasure, eating, drinking, doing drugs, or whatever it is, or something more worthwhile, building a business empire, or knowledge, or art. All of that is Vishayananda. And what we are suggesting here is that there is a higher way of existing, which is spiritual life. Devotion to God, or meditation, or this Vedantic inquiry. The more we advance into spiritual life, combined with this passion for these worldly pursuits, because the two do not go together. In that case, you will get the same happiness that worldly person gets, but in a much more purer, much more stable form, and more than that worldly person gets. Yeah.
My name is Meenakshi. My question to you is that there is this space which exists everywhere, the huge, the vastness, and then we are in a pot. The space is limited. For some reason, we are only able to see the covering of the pot and the limited space. So how does one get to break that barrier and ultimately be part of that, experience that vastness? Because clearly this thick pot made of my mind, body, prana, whatever, the thoughts, emotions, whatever part of the brain it is so thick and so hard, and my focus is at the bottom of the pot, because if I'm looking at the up part of the pot...
I think I understand the question.
Thank you.
So did you come yesterday?
This is my first time.
Oh, okay, so you're starting off at the end of the... So you need to listen to the talk which was given on Tuesday and the talk which was given on Wednesday. So this forms a third of a series of 3 talks. So what I'm doing here is building on what we did on Tuesday and Wednesday. But the answer to that is, many of you have attended yesterday's talk and day before yesterday's talk. So I'm trying to reply to her question. What we do in Vedanta, what we did yesterday, for example, is precisely that, taking our attention away from the body. You remember the food body, the vital body, the mental body, taking our attention from the body to something subtler, the prana, then to the mind, then to the intellect, then to what's called the causal body. We went through that process yesterday. And then to ourselves as awareness, as consciousness, as existence awareness. What is the Atman, or the real nature of ourselves? And that is the sky. Yeah. So our attention, because the claim here is you are not the pot, you are the sky, your space itself. So your attention has to be diverted, taken away from the pot to yourself. And the process for that was discussed yesterday. Yes. Who's next?
Hi, Swami. First of all, thank you so much for gracing us.
Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Roy.
Roy.
First of all, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and your knowledge. I've always wondered, if I am Brahman and I realize that I am everything and the source of everything, then what is that experience, that sensation, that feeling we get that when we chant or listen to God songs like Hare Krishna and Shiva songs and other form of songs, that feeling of pure love, bliss, passion, and surrender to God, with our hearts feeling like it's completely wrenched, wet, heavy with love, joy, and cry for God. What is that feeling in relation to ourselves, and what is it source to?
Yes, it's the same thing. However, the difference is this. There, when you sing Hare Krishna, you sing a devotional hymn to Shiva with focus, with passion, with a lot of love in your heart, maybe tears in your eyes. That's a positive effect and a very pure kind of feeling. There you take yourself as Roy, and then you become conscious of a very pure, vast, divine presence, and you relate to that. Deeply lovable, pure, higher, call it Krishna, call it Christ, call it Shiva, the divine presence. And you relate to it with love. And so that is called bhakti. a feeling of love and devotion. This path is the other way around. Instead of looking outwards to find that, we look at ourselves. What we did. Did you come yesterday? Yes. Yes. So you remember what we did yesterday? You start with the body, focus, and then we inquire, go further into the pranic body, into the mental body, and so on. And then we discover ourselves as the witness consciousness. So here you're deconstructing yourself. And in that path, you're not working on yourself. You're taking yourself as you find yourself, and then focusing on God. Yeah. Yes.
Swamiji, namaste. My question is this. My name is B.K. Rath. I just want to know, the Ramanujan, did he have the what kind of happiness he had? Is it the spiritual happiness or?
You mean the mathematician Ramanujan?
Mathematician.
Yeah, I'm sure he had tremendous happiness. It's the happiness of an intellectual. And he was a pure mathematician, so they get a lot of pure joy. Pure mathematicians, I saw a cartoon. You know, there is this hierarchy in the sciences, or they claim at least. So there was this, physiologist, and the biologist says, I am above you. There's a cartoon. And then the chemist says, I am above the biologist. And then the physicist comes and says, I am above you. I'm superior to the chemist. And then the applied mathematician says, I am superior to you, the physicist. And in the cartoon, far above, there is the pure mathematician looking down on them. Yoo-hoo, I am here. So that's the Ramanujan. So their joy was, that's also Vishayananda, but it's a kind of heavenly kind of joy. Like these heavenly musicians, if there's a heavenly mathematician, he'll be like that.
Hi, Swami. My name is Fuding. So I understand our essence is Satchidananda.
Yes.
How does love figure into that formulation?
Yes. So Ananda aspect becomes love in human life. The Ananda aspect of Satchidananda becomes love in human life. This part is not developed at all, in fact, in Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta is all about oneness. But when you talk about love, as a one person loving another person, or many, many persons, like love for everybody, that theology is developed in other forms of Vedanta. For example, I know of the Achintya Bheda Bheda, the philosophy based on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya. So there, the Ananda aspect is the love of the jiva it's a power of God. And one aspect of that is called Ladini Shakti, the power of delight, divine delight. And that is manifested as Radha in their theology. So love is a power of God in their theology. Yes.
You mentioned a book yesterday. It discussed the different forms of non-duality in different traditions or religious traditions. Do you ever remember what that was?
That book?
Yeah, what was that?
Yes, and there was also somebody who wanted the name of that book. And yes, the name of the book, I found it out. It's Paths to Transcendence. Paths to Transcendence, Shankara Ibn Arabi, Meister Eckhart. The name of the author is Reza Shah Kazemi. Reza, R-E-Z-A, Shah, S-H-A-H, Kazemi. He is K-A-Z-E-M-I. Paths to Transcendence. So it takes up non-duality in Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, non-duality in Islam, and non-duality in Christianity, and compares them. It's a wonderful work, very serious work. Yeah.
There, that's it.
Yes.
Pranam Swami Sarvapriyananda, I'm a Asim. Not the suffering of the Vishya attachment to worldly objects, but as Ramakrishna sets the example of Bhajananda, we experience suffering and separation. So is it that suffering is grace?
Suffering can push us towards spirituality. Often happiness doesn't. Pleasure and happiness, a nice, pleasant life, you'll often find it is not very conducive to spirituality. That's why in the Hindu idea of things, all these heavens we're talking about, so all these beings in different heavens, these gods and demigods and all, they are not usually very spiritual. They're just having a wonderful time. So they're good people, and they're good beings, but not very spiritual. Often you'll find the very richest of people, the most powerful, the richest of people, they generally are not particularly inclined towards spirituality. Some of them. I mean, again, always there are exceptions. So are the poorest inclined? No. Just as the demons in hell are suffering so much, they have no time for spirituality. People who are very poor, very sick, and very, maybe in a political system which crushes the life out of them. So very difficult life. And they also find it very difficult to be spiritual because the struggle is too much, the suffering is too much. It's only in between. We also noticed that many of our monks, those who actually formally become monks, many of them they come from middle class families. Majority of them. You would expect maybe the super rich, they've seen everything in life, so they would have this passion and then they will become spiritual. Some do, very rare, fortunate few. But mostly they don't, because they're having good time. What's the problem? There's no problem in sight. There is a huge problem waiting for them very soon, but there's no problem in sight right now. And you would expect, if life is so difficult, why don't you become a monk? For very poor people who are struggling, no. Because if I'm struggling a lot in life and I'm deprived, I have powerful desires. I would really, really like to have money. I would really, really like to have, a family, or really like to have that gadget or that vacation, which all those people are enjoying. Then that will not allow me to be spiritual until I have experienced a little of that. So suffering pushes us towards spiritual life. Often it is a blessing. If it pushes us towards spiritual life. Sometimes suffering is just dumb suffering. People just suffer and suffer. That also, ultimately it leads to maturation. Yes.
My name is Zakir Ganja.
Yes.
And unlike most of the people here, I'm totally new to this teaching. So what would be my takeaway from your teaching to someone new like me?
One book?
One takeaway on this entire 3 days lecture that you had.
I can put it in, Vedanta is very easy to put in, like a short sentence or one quick takeaway. Vedanta is pretty easy to do that. It's pretty elegant that way. Vedanta would say, Tattvamasi, you are that. Or in Vivekananda's terms, Vivekananda put it in a much more relatable way. He said, the divinity within and the oneness of all existence. The divinity within and the oneness of all existence. If you went to Dalai Lama and asked something like that, he would just say, be kind. That's a practical implication of all of this.
Back here.
Pranam Swamiji, my question is, it's not my question, I borrowed this question. So which category does Sarvapriyananda falls into?
Oh, the Ananda. Yes, we are all supposed to be. No, that's a good question. What exactly are monks? We are those is referred to as Shrotriyasya Jakamahatasya, those who are spiritual seekers, those who are seeking bhajanananda. And remember, the condition of that is it must be based on renunciation. It must be a turning away from the usual avenues of worldly fulfillment. And so therefore, any spiritual seeker, it don't have to be a monk formally. Anybody who's a spiritual seeker, whether you do it by design or by default, you become monk-like somewhere inside. So that's what a monk is. A person who is now in bhajanananda and seeking to realize or attain or manifest that brahmananda. That's so track 2. Yeah. Track 2.
Bring the mic close to you.
Yes.
Pujya Swamiji, Pranam. Mama Nam Ramesha. I have a very simple question from yesterday. The question 3, fulfillment of desires. Is it necessary that desires must be fulfilled?
Is it necessary? No. But you are driven to it because we want happiness. Is it necessary to be happy? Yes. Because Nobody says you should be happy. It's axiomatic for us. We want to be happy. Anything, if you say, why are you doing this? I can say, why are you doing this work? For money. Why do you want money? I'll buy this stuff. Why do you want to buy this stuff? Because I want to be happy. Now after that you can't ask, why do you want to be happy? And that's everybody, it's axiomatic. We say that is the axiomatic. It's the basis of everything. That's why we try to fulfill desires. But is it necessary? Of course not.
Yeah, according to Lord Krishna in the 18th chapter and also Patanjali in the 4th chapter, for spiritual progress, vairagya is necessary.
That's what we have been saying so far. The whole discussion today was that. To move from, but it's good that you pointed out, to move from track 1 to track 2. From Vishayananda to Bhajanananda. The difference is vairagya and your Vedantic knowledge. Shrotriyasya cha akamahatasya. This akamahata is the Upanishadic term, the Vedic term for vairagya. The difference in this is made by levels and levels of vairagya. Your Vedantic conviction is the same. Shankaracharya says, how do you keep getting more and more happiness in spiritual life? When you're vairagya, your dispassion is more and more and more. The more your dispassion, the more happy you will be. Yeah. I hope you don't take away from all of this that we learned. We have to go out and have and party. That's what. And after death, we will go to heaven and party there too. And that's what the Upanishad is teaching us. No, the teaching is center yourself in the knowledge that you are Brahman, have dispassion or vairagya, you will be happy. And ultimately, you will realize also that you are Brahman. Where? Yes.
Namaste Swamiji. Yesterday you took us through the wonderful exercise of Panchakosha Viveka and led us to the cave of the heart. In the end there was a blankness and there was a sense of I that experienced this blankness. In Upadesha Saram, Ramana Maharshi talks about the Triputi, Real I, Chidabhasa and Aham Vritti. Could you give us specific pointers how to tease apart this Real I from the Chidabhasa and to sever that so-called Chitjara Granthi?
All right, 2 points here. One is, go through this process. Start with the observation of the physical body and then see why you are not the physical body. Then the pranic body, then the mind body, then the intellect body, and then the causal body. As your attention becomes more and more inward, more and more subtle, then you say, the causal body, it will feel like deep silence, quietness, no movement, blank. But also appearing to you. You are the 10th person. Remember the 10th person story? You look puzzled. You are the 10th. Yes, you think about it. Notice that 2 things, put them together. I exist, but I can't find what I am. You see what I'm talking about? When you go through that process, body, breath, mind, intellect, then the blankness, none of them are me. But then what am I? Then you have to turn that way, to that one to which all these 5 are appearing. What is that one? That you are. That must be consciousness. That must be existence. Because you exist, no doubt. And you are aware, no doubt. So awareness, existence is the self. And that must be caught intuitively. Keep doing that. Keep turning inwards. And then do these things. One is, never try to catch it. Never try to catch it, because trying to catch it is like trying to find the 10th person outside. You'll never find it. Either you will find something and think that is the self, that might be just a rarefied form of the mind. Or you won't find anything and you will think it's a hopeless thing. It's non-existent. You'll go into nihilism or skepticism. But that consciousness itself is revealing all this to you. When you grasp what is that, I am that awareness, not an affirmation. You actually do that 10th man thing and you grasp, I am that awareness very clearly, to which all of this is appearing. Stay there for a while, then drop that also. Because there's an element of mind involved there also. Drop that also. After that, words will not work. That which is, will be. It will be clear, but you cannot express at all in words. So that's one. Then cutting the Chitjara Granthi, it's like this. This example, face, mirror, face reflected in the mirror. Face, the mirror is like the mind, The face reflected in the mirror is like the reflected consciousness. What do you mean by reflected consciousness? First, be aware of what the mind is. Thoughts. Right now you're aware. Thoughts, emotions, perceptions. That's the mind. Now notice that mind is conscious. So that consciousness which we feel, right now when we are talking about Atman is pure consciousness, when most of us will feel that, I feel conscious. But that I feel conscious, that's what is called reflected consciousness, chidabhasa. That reflected consciousness is like the face reflected in the mirror. Mind is like the mirror. The face reflected in the mirror is the consciousness which we feel right now. Now, what is the connection between the face in the mirror and the real face? No connection. There's nothing. No connection here. What is the connection between you, the real consciousness, and the reflected consciousness in the mind? There's no connection. One sadhu put it this way: Bevkufi matra hai Mahatma ji. Only the connection is stupidity only. There is no connection. Although it seems startlingly like you. Here is the mind and awareness. This is exactly what I think of as myself. No, it isn't. It's your reflection. What you are, then let me, what am I? Don't try that, because you'll never find it. If you find it, then it won't be you. The last thing that you can find is the mind, a very rarefied, silent mind, shining in reflected consciousness. That's the last thing you will find. Drop that, and then you are what you are. This is cutting the chit jada granthi. What is the granthi? Means a knot. What is the knot? Between the awareness and the object, chit jada. What knot is it? There's no knot at all. It's just stupidity. It's our ignorance.
Hello, thank you, Swami. My name is Teek.
Yeah.
My question is, it sounds like you're describing an instantaneous path to enlightenment, awareness, and maybe it takes a lot of work, but eventually it just happens.
Yeah.
So my question is, how does a person who becomes aware, how does their life change? How does their activities change?
So this is a good question. Is it an instantaneous path, and how does life change? The answer is yes, it's instantaneous. But only at that moment of enlightenment. That cutting of the chit jada granthi, when you realize what you are and what you are not. That moment is instantaneous. There is a clear before and after, which will never, and there's a door you walk through, you'll never unwalk that. You can't walk it back anymore. So don't be in a hurry to be enlightened. So when you pass through that door, that's done. That's instantaneous. But leading up to that might be years and years, maybe lifetimes of spiritual seeking, of praying and meditating and pilgrimages and rituals and so any number of spiritual practices that you have tried out in this lifetime and maybe other lifetimes also. So that's a long process. It's maturation, it's purification, it's character building. Going from an unethical life to an ethical life, growing from a distracted life to a focused and concentrated life, going from desire to love, all of those things, from selfishness to selflessness. This is the way it changes until the moment of enlightenment. Then again change will start. That enlightenment will blossom in your life like a seed unfurling. And becoming a plant and then unfurling. That also takes time. If you stay with that enlightenment, like many do, and bear down upon it, the process of manifestation then, I won't say transformation anymore, manifestation of that which you have found, it will bear fruit fast. But even if you don't do anything at all after that moment of enlightenment, it still bear fruit. So then first is, before this you were seeking it. Now you have found it. But now you're trying to manifest it, live it. If in the process of seeking, if that has been long and you've worked hard before the moment of enlightenment, then the process of manifestation will be easy and fast. If we have not worked hard, there are a lot of issues still remaining. And in that case, how did you become enlightened? Could be. You never know. There is no logic to it. Sometimes a breakthrough comes. Sometimes it's the grace of Guru. Sometimes it's past karma. Sometimes it is the grace of God. You suddenly get something. But then the manifestation of that will take, you'll still have to struggle afterwards. Now you're found. You're no longer seeking anymore. But it still, work remains because you're unable to manifest it. Yeah.
Hi. Hello. My name is Tay. And my question is actually a good segue from that question. It's talking about life after like God realization. I guess like, hypothetically, when that happens, you still wake up and you have to live your day to a certain extent. And so just in a very like practical sense, you go to the store and there's 2 brands of cereal that you want to get for breakfast.
Yeah.
And you're going to choose one of them based on some sort of preference, which is kind of like a desire.
Yes.
So how does that work in relation to not...
No, Sri Ramakrishna mentions this. He says that whatever was there earlier will continue afterwards. Whatever was there earlier will continue afterwards. Sri Ramakrishna was a village boy from a village of in Bengal in the late 19th century. And he loved these Bengali sweets called jalebis. You get them in the US now also. And after being enlightened also, all his life, he loved jalebis. It didn't change to, chocolate ice cream afterwards. So the preferences did not change. The language the enlightened person will speak, the mannerisms, all will remain more or less the same. However, what difference does it make then? None of that will be binding. Sri Ramakrishna says a rope, suppose it's burnt, but it still retains its shape. So it's burnt, it's ash, but it looks like a rope. But it won't bind you, and it'll just take a breath, you blow at it and it'll fly away. So, whereas we are all trapped by this personality, that's all we are. And we struggle, so much struggle to make a little improvement. And for the enlightened person, it's much, much easier. So, for example, negativities won't remain. Or if they do remain, they can overcome it just like that. Sri Ramakrishna pointed out to his Advaita Guru that you shouldn't get angry. You say that everywhere is Brahman. You're still getting... He was enlightened. But he was this wandering monk, and they have this sacred fire which they light. And the night watchman of the Kali temple in Dakshineshwar comes late in the night, and he wants a fire for his smoke. He sees fire there, and this monk, and then he goes to borrow a coal of fire. And this it's sacred for the monk. So the master becomes furious and chases him with his tongs. He didn't beat him, but... And Sri Ramakrishna clapped and rolled in laughter and said, I've seen the extent of your Brahman knowledge. You are going to beat that poor man. But it seems that his master was never seen to be angry again after that. They are like, they can throw it off. Whatever is, you pointed out, this is not right. So it doesn't bind you anymore. And usually whatever is left, a set of attributes, behavior patterns will be left, but they are always either neutral or positive. Basically our idea of a saint, an enlightened person, a saint. If there were negative characteristics, they would have been removed long ago in the process of spiritual struggle. Even if they haven't been, they will not be binding. So for example, that particular cereal. Okay, let me give an actual example. I remember a senior monk in our main monastery. I was going to enter his office one day where he was sitting, and a young man who had come to become a monk was sitting there. And I heard the exchange between them. The senior monk said to this young man, will you have tea? And I'm asking for someone to bring tea. He asked someone to bring tea. And then tea came. And this monk is telling that young person, see, I asked for tea and it came. But it might not have come. And you should be fine with either. So the young man looked quite puzzled. And why wouldn't he come? But the point being, what seems to be very clear, I want this, if I get it, I'll be happy. And if I don't get it, I'll be unhappy. None of that applies to the enlightened person. They're going to be happy regardless.
Yes. Hi, Swami. Anthony. Is the desire to be free from desire also a desire that needs to be overcome?
Yes, it's a desire, doesn't need to be overcome. It needs to be fulfilled. So somebody asked, Somebody asked Sri Ramakrishna, is a desire for God, isn't it a desire too? And he said, no. It's, he gave the example of sugar candy. He says, most sweets, if you take them, they cause what is called acid reflux. But if you take sugar candy, this is like a sort of a home medicine there. You put it in water, it acts as an antacid. The point being, the desire for God overcomes all other desires and frees you from desire. Whereas if you let go of that desire for God, then you'll just be engulfed by other desires. I don't want anything at all, not even God. Well, you're in for trouble. You may not use the God word. If you're a Buddhist, you wouldn't use the God word. Maybe you would say, I want nirvana, I want the peace of nirvana. Whatever it is, that spiritual goal helps us to overcome worldliness. Yeah. We'll just end now. The last question, yes.
Pranams, Swamiji. My name is Mitra. Just a question. A lot of us are on the grahastha stage of life, and we are still trying to pursue spiritual happiness. And I was just wondering, as far as trying to keep on the path of spiritual happiness, we still are born with certain karmas that we need to go through that interfere with certain aspects of our spiritual seeking, whether it's through karma, karma yoga or whatever. So in order to still kind of keep on this path of seeking spiritual happiness, is it just that we have to just do our own sadhana and try to use discrimination and kind of viveka, like to kind of say, okay, that is not good for my spiritual goal? Or are we, because we're still kind of coming with the force of certain things we are choosing in our life. We are born to go through. So I need some clarification for that.
I think I understand your question. No, you don't need to become a monk, if that's what you're asking. No. The question is that suppose we want spiritual joy, and yet we are in householder life, we have a job and a family. And then you said, there are so many things here which keep us from our spiritual practice, which can be an obstruction to spiritual life. They only seem to be. That's the message of the Bhagavad Gita, that in the midst of action, in fact the most terrible action, which is war, that's why it's set in the battlefield, you can still be spiritual. It's not the external environment and the people and the job that is the obstacle. It's what we are seeking through that. Usually what we are seeking in worldly life is Vishayananda, the track 1. Now it says, if you want spiritual joy, track 2, you have to give up that project of trying to get happiness through track 1. Track 1 will still continue in the sense that you'll still have a family, you'll still have a job. Arjuna still had to fight the battle. Life went on as usual. So life will go on as usual. But now internally there's a revolution. You no longer seek fulfillment, that this thing which I am doing in life will give me fulfillment. No, there's a promise of much greater fulfillment, happiness, spiritual progress in track 2, which is Bhajanananda. So I will engage in that in this life. What was earlier a job now becomes karma yoga for me. What was earlier a family now becomes service and karma yoga, worship for me. Without changing your Facebook status, you don't have to tell anybody that now I am on track 2. You will find everything goes better actually. Yes. All right. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
So today we got the last conclusion of our spiritual journey to be ever blissful and swim in joy. That's our nature. So we're very thankful to Swami for coming and giving this a feast of spiritual ideas and thoughts and how to apply in life. And that's a great thing we are expecting in our life to manifest in our life, no? And he is kind enough to come over here, and we will expect to come again in the next. But he is very busy. It is and then next summer. Before that, if it happens, that will be great. If not, at least next summer we will expect him. Today is the last day of his talking here, and tomorrow he will be again going to Santa Barbara. Not tomorrow, Saturday. Saturday evening, 5 o'clock, and Sunday, 11 o'clock in Santa Barbara. So thank you, Swami, for coming, and thank you all for joining us again. God bless us. Mother bless you.